Now for the news in detail. Brazil has recorded 602 deaths overnight from COVID-19, raising the toll there to nearly 65,000 with over 1.6 million cases. Meanwhile, 273 people lost their lives in Mexico in the past 24 hours, pushing its tally to over 30,600. Worldwide, the death count has exceeded 533,000 with over 11.4 million cases. More on that now in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic is getting worse globally with each passing day as the second wave of infections forces new lockdowns. Hospitals in some parts of the U.S. are in danger of being overwhelmed as the COVID-19 cases continue to surge in the country. Arkansas governor says states should not delay reimposing restrictive measures if cases surge again.
But governors have to be able to adjust to what is happening with the virus. We've done that in Arkansas. We were flat for a long time. We had a small increase. We went back down, and now you see it going back up. And we're responding to that. That's what governors do. That's what we have to do.
After 4 months of closure, the Louvre Museum in the heart of Paris is set to reopen today. Saudi Arabia has announced new health protocols for this year's Hajj, which will only be open to domestic pilgrims. Touching the Kaaba will be banned, and a social distancing space of 1.5 meters enforced during mass prayers and while circling the Kaaba. Touching the Kaaba will be banned, and a social distancing space of 1.5 meters enforced during mass prayers and while circling the Kaaba. Meanwhile, the border between Australia's states of Victoria and New South Wales will be closed at midnight for the first time in a century.
Staying inside your flat, inside your unit, is the safest and best thing to do. It's not pleasant. I know it's challenging. It's very, very challenging. But it is far preferable to seeing vast numbers of people with underlying health conditions infected with this virus, spreading it between each other.
In Asia, mainland China has reported 4 new cases of the coronavirus in the past day. After an aggressive second wave, South Korea's daily new virus cases have fallen slightly, but a steady rise in both locally transmitted infections and imported cases continues to put a strain on the country's virus fight.
India has become the third worst hit country by coronavirus in the world. According to Worldometer, India has surpassed Russia and is behind the US and Brazil. The country's health ministry has reported over 24,200 new infections just in the past 24 hours, raising its tally to nearly 700,000. The health ministry said 425 more people died since yesterday, taking the overall death count to over 19,500, I should say. On Sunday, India reported a record 613 deaths and nearly 25,000 infection cases. Here in Pakistan, 50 more people have died of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, taking the toll to 4,762. The health ministry says 3,344 new cases were detected, with the tally crossing 231,000. Officials say nearly 132,000 people have recovered from the virus across the country, while more than 2,400 are critically ill. The province of Sindh is badly hit by the virus with nearly 95,000 infections. Punjab has reported nearly 82,000 cases. In northwestern province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the tally of patients is over 28,000. There are nearly 11,000 cases in Balochistan, while the capital city Islamabad has reported more than 13,000 cases. Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan have over 2,900 cases. India has once again resorted to unprovoked ceasefire violations at the line of control, injuring 5 civilians. The Pakistani military's media wing said the wounded include 2 boys and 2 elderly women. The Inter-Services Public Relations said Indian troops targeted civilian population in Kyal sector along the LOC late last night. It said Pakistani troops responded effectively to the Indian firing. Pakistan has summoned the Indian Charge d'Affaires in Islamabad multiple times over India's increasing ceasefire violations in recent months. Islamabad has warned the international community that India is trying to create the pretext for a false flag operation. Well, the Afghan government says it is reluctant to release 597 out of a total of 5,000 Taliban prisoners as part of the Doha deal. A key confidence-building measure, the prisoner release remains a bottleneck to kickstart the intra-Afghan negotiations. The head of the prisoners of release affairs, Ahmed Rashid Totakhil, says these individuals are accused of dreadful crimes and moral issues. Totakhil said the included individuals have been charged with murder, rape, and other crimes of a serious nature. Rejecting Kabul's stance, the Taliban say the government is violating the Doha Pact by punishing individuals arrested on charges of just being a Taliban member. So far, 4,015 Taliban prisoners have been released. Israel says its warplanes have targeted multiple locations in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Defense Ministry says it struck Hamas infrastructure and military posts in retaliation to rocket fire. No casualties have been reported so far, while no Palestinian faction has claimed responsibility for the firing of rockets towards Israel. Israel, meanwhile, has launched a new spy satellite that it said would provide high-quality surveillance for its military intelligence. The Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz said they would continue to strengthen and maintain the country's capabilities on every front. Tensions are on the rise again between Israel and Hamas over the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to annex the occupied West Bank. Well, Iran says it has built underground missile cities along the Gulf coastline, warning of a nightmare for Tehran's enemies. In an interview, the Revolutionary Guard's Navy chief said the cities were established along the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Admiral Ali Reza Tangsiri said Iran's enemies have misleading information about its missile infrastructure. He said the region would continue to be deprived of peace as long as U.S. forces are present in it. Tangsiri said Iranian forces are present wherever the U.S. has its military presence in the region. Iraq says a rocket has struck Baghdad's heavily fortified Green Zone, which houses foreign missions, including the U.S. Embassy. The Iraqi military said the rocket fell short of its target and instead damaged a nearby house, wounding a child. The military said it also thwarted another attack and seized a rocket and launcher set to target the Taji base north of Baghdad. This came just hours after the U.S. Embassy tested an anti-rocket defense system. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attacks. In recent months, U.S. diplomats and troops have been the target of dozens of missile attacks in Iraq. Libya's deputy defense minister says the country will respond to recent overnight airstrikes on Al-Watiya airbase. In a tweet, Salah al-Namroush said the strikes by foreign fighter jets supporting Khalifa Haftar were an attempt to distract from the government's recent victories. He said the response to the attacks would be given at the right time and the right place. Earlier, a military official had said the Al-Watiya airbase was struck by unidentified planes. No casualties have been reported, but some equipment recently brought to boost the airbase's defense capabilities was damaged. The overnight attacks were the first since forces loyal to the UN-backed government captured the airbase in May. In Nigeria, 21 people are feared dead after an overloaded boat capsized in East Central Benue River. Police said 2 people have been rescued while the search for possible survivors is underway. It said the vessel with 23 on board sank midstream while sailing towards Makurdi city. Officials said victims were identified as members of a local church who were going to attend a conference. The incident occurred 2 days after 21 people, including the captain of a ferry, sank in Lagos. 6 people were confirmed dead and 14 others were rescued, while 1 passenger is still missing. Ruling Conservatives have won the most seats in Croatia's parliamentary elections. With more than 91% of votes counted, the Croatian Democratic Union has grabbed 67 seats in the 151-seat parliament. An alliance led by the Liberal Social Democratic Party, the main opposition party, came in second with 41 seats. The Democratic Union is expected to form a majority government in coalition with smaller right-wing parties that have also won some seats. The acting prime minister and winning party's leader, Andrej Plenković, praised the election result, calling it a great victory. The Social Democratic Party head, Davor Bernardic, has conceded defeat, saying he will resign from leadership. Well, in the Dominican Republic, the ruling party is on track to lose power after 16 years, as early election results show the opposition candidate, Luis Abinader, is in the lead. Preliminary results show Abinader won nearly 54% of the vote, which, if sustained, will be enough to avoid a runoff election. The ruling party candidate, Gonzalo Castillo, was in second place at 37% of the vote. Abinader has declared victory in the presidential elections after these initial results.
The road that lies ahead will not be easy. We will walk with determination, but also with prudence. The first thing we should save is the truth and to build trust between the government and society, because it is only with the truth and trust that we can get the necessary unity to fight democracy again and to develop our nation.
I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned for them. Welcome back. The Tokyo governor, Yoriko Koike, has won a second term to head the Japanese capital, buoyed to victory by her public support for the handling of the coronavirus. In her victory speech, Koike pledged to do her utmost to take measures to protect residents amid the pandemic. The Japanese public broadcaster said exit polls showed that 74% of respondents supported Koike. The first woman to head Tokyo, Koike is viewed as a potential candidate to succeed Prime Minister Shinzo Abe when his term ends in 2021. She'll also be the face of the host city of the next Olympics, which were postponed by a year because of coronavirus. France has ruled out a total ban on using equipment from the Chinese tech giant Huawei in the rollout of the country's 5G telecom network. However, the head of the cybersecurity agency, Guillaume Poupard, urged French firms to avoid switching to the company. Poupard says firms already authorized to use Huawei will be allowed to benefit from this policy. He said the choice was made to protect French independence and not as an act of hostility towards China. The U.S. government has been pushing its allies to exclude the Chinese firm from the West's next-generation communications networks. Washington has alleged that Beijing can use the telecommunications company for spying. Huawei has denied those charges. Well, the UK says it will impose sanctions independently for the first time on dozens of individuals accused of human rights abuses around the world. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said he would launch the government's new post-Brexit sanctions regime. The Foreign Office said Raab will table the final legislation needed to trigger the UK's new autonomous sanctions regime today. It said the list will target individuals or organizations accused of rights violations and those who profit financially from those abuses. The first list is expected to include individuals from Russia, Saudi Arabia, and North Korea. Earlier, Britain acted as a member of the UN or the European Union. In Japan, nearly 40 people are feared dead due to floods and landslides as torrential rains lash southwestern Kyushu Island. Flooding and mudslides that began at the weekend have killed 21 people so far. Officials put in place new evacuation orders over warnings that riverbanks are at risk of bursting. The Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said 18 people were presumed dead pending official confirmation, while 13 others were missing. He said some 40,000 members of the self-defense force were involved in rescue missions. Suga said evacuation centers were also working on preventing the spread of COVID-19. Japan's meteorological agency says such rainfall had never been seen before in the region. Iran's Atomic Energy Organization says a fire that broke out at the NATANZ nuclear facility on Thursday caused significant damage. State media quoted a spokesman for the organization as saying that the fire could slow down Tehran's development of advanced centrifuges. He said Iran would replace the damaged building with a bigger one having more advanced equipment. On Friday, Iran's top security body said that the cause of an incident and fire at the site had been determined and will be announced later. Some Iranian officials have said it may have been caused by cyber sabotage. The Natanz uranium enrichment site is one of several Iranian facilities monitored by inspectors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. In India, at least 8 people have died after a fire broke out at a candle factory in the northern Ghaziabad city. Police officials said the incident took place in Modinagar area as the factory was loaded with inflammatory material. They said about 20 to 25 people were working when the fire broke out. Firefighters were rushed into the area while the exact cause of the fire is being determined. Also in India, lightning strikes have killed 147 people in the northern state of Bihar just over the last 10 days. Officials have warned of more extreme weather conditions to come, driven by climate change. They said this year's toll in Bihar has already surpassed the total number of deaths recorded annually for the state over the past few years. Last year, 170 people were killed in lightning strikes during the monsoon period. Bihar's disaster management minister said rising temperatures due to climate change are to blame for the increasing lightning strikes. The official said 25 people died on Saturday. The Indian Meteorological Department has warned of more lightning over the next 24 or 48 hours. In Brazil, increased deforestation and fires are the main threats to the Amazon rainforest. Experts fear that the double danger can diminish trees on thousands of acres. The details in this report.
In June, Brazil's Space Research Agency detected over 2,200 fires in the Amazon, which is higher than the same month last year. Another alarming indicator is rising deforestation. Fires are usually set to clear the land after trees have been cut down. Official data shows that deforestation is up 34% in the first 5 months of 2020. Environmentalists predict that at the current rate of deforestation, Amazon will be deprived of trees on the thousands of acres. Environmentalists predict that at the current pace of deforestation, Amazon will be deprived of trees on thousands of acres. Earlier this month, Amazon Environmental Research Institute analyzed that the areas are at risk of being set ablaze.
The investigations have shown that the dry season at the regions of the boundary between the Amazon and the Cerrado, which is part of Brazil's agriculture production area, the dry season has increased by 6 to 7 days each decade, and this increase in length of the dry season could threaten the second agricultural harvest.
The Brazilian government has deployed the armed forces to protect the Amazon in May. Despite the initiative, deforestation has risen 12% in May from a year earlier and increased in June.
There must be no lenience for illegal activities in the Amazon. More punishment is needed for illegal mining, land grabbing, and public land invasion. That needs to happen immediately. If not, we are going to have a much worse situation in the coming days. If not, we are going to have a much worse situation in the coming months.
The communities in the Amazon have been bracing for the smoke that sweeps over the region during this fire season. Environmentalists say weaker environmental enforcement is to blame for rising destruction.
Bourses in Asia have jumped as mainland Chinese stocks lead gains regionally. Anticipation of another bull run has lifted investor sentiments. The Shanghai Composite soared over 4.5%, while the Shenzhen component rose over 3%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also saw robust gains, rising nearly 3%. Elsewhere in the region, the Nikkei 225 in Japan rose almost 2%. South Korea's Kospi advanced over 1.5% as well. Meanwhile, shares in Australia bucked the overall trend regionally and edged lower, with the S&P ASX 200 dipping nearly 0.5%. Overall, the MSCI Asia ex-Japan index also gained nearly 1.5%. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. Well, for the latest updates on these and other stories, you can always follow us on our social media at Indus.News. Thanks very much for watching.